Hey guys, look what I have made. Beautiful lemon bars. A wonderful creamy lemon filling with a shortbread crust. These are so good. So let's see what they taste like. I'm gonna take one of these guys, since these are really filling. I'm gonna take one of these guys and just cut it in half and cut it in half again, because all I want is just a bite. One beautiful bite. And let's see what this bite is like. Wow. Wow. The shortbread is buttery and crunchy. The lemon custard is smooth, a little bit tart. These are delicious, absolutely delicious. And let me show you how to make them. Okay, the ingredients you need to make the crust part of the lemon bars are 1 stick of butter. It's gotta be butter, always butter. And it needs to be softened, meaning you need to keep it outside at room temperature, not outdoors, but in the kitchen at room temperature for at least an hour so that it starts to get squishy. Because if it's a hard stick of butter, cold hard stick of butter, it's going to be almost impossible to mix it up with the other ingredients. So softened stick of butter, also some basic all-purpose flour, some powdered sugar, also known as confectioner's sugar, salt, vanilla, and to do it you're going to need an 8" by 8" pan lined with foil, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. And those are the crust ingredients, so I'll show you what to do first. Before I get to making the crust, I want to talk a little bit more about the pan. So 8" by 8". Sometimes people will ask me, will it make a difference if I use a different size pan? Yes, it will make a difference, and probably not a good difference. 8" by 8" pans are one of the most common sizes. I've also lined it with foil, as you can see. And I want to show you, there's a couple different kinds of foil here. This is a regular foil. It's pretty thin though, and it breaks easily. For lining pans, heavy duty aluminum foil is better because it's much harder to break it. It's stronger. If all you have is regular foil, just use it. If you don't have any foil of any kind, you can just use the pan all by itself. Thing is, when it's time to cut them into bars, it's much harder to do if there's no foil lining it, as you'll see when I take it out. Okay, and I'm also going to spray this with a little bit of cooking spray, not a ton. There. Let me put that aside, and now we're going to get making the crust. Okay, so what I've got is, in a medium bowl here, I've got 1 cup of flour, and I just used a 1 cup measuring cup to measure the flour. I weigh the flour when we're making a type of dough, and this isn't a type of dough, this is just a crust, so it's not so important. It's not important to weigh it. You can just measure it using a measuring cup, 1 cup measuring cup, and my stick of softened butter is in there too. Now what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to take a butter knife and I'm just going to break this up into a couple of pieces like that. Then your hands need to be super clean because you're going to go in there with your hands. What I'm doing is, first I'm going to cover all those butter lumps with flour, and then I'm going to smush them up with my fingers, always kind of coating them back in butter so I don't get all the butter on my hands. And what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to squeeze the butter in there, keep breaking up that butter, tossing it with the flour like this, just like this, until it's thoroughly combined and I don't see any more big chunks of butter. And I'll come back when that has happened. Okay, so take a look at this. It looks really crumbly now. My fingers mashed up a lot of that butter, but there's still some smaller chunks of butter. So what I'm gonna do now is add the rest of my crust ingredients, which is 1/4 cup of confectioner's sugar and 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and we're going to go with 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla as well. Did you notice this? 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla. I measured the salt first because it's dry, it easily slips out. Then I measured the 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla because it's wet. If the same ingredient needs the same spoon, measure the wet ingredient last. Okay, now here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going back in there with my hand, mixing it again, mixing it again. Now I'm kind of scrunching it together, getting everything in there. And what you're gonna end up with is basically a slightly crumbly cookie dough. And we'll come back when it looks like it's supposed to look. Okay, so take a look at what we got here. So it's definitely, see when I squeeze it with my hands, kind of clumps together. Get a good look at what it's supposed to look like. So what I'm gonna do now is put it in here, okay? Make sure you get it all out of there. And then you wanna start to spread it around with your fingertips. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna press it down. Press it down in there. Now, if it starts sticking to your hands, your fingers, you can use a little water, and that might help it not to stick to your hands just a tiny bit. So you're just going to press it down as evenly as you can so that you don't have like thick parts, thin parts. Mash it down in there till you have it nice and smooth. It can be a little crumbled looking on top. That's okay. That is a-okay. Okay, now what I'm gonna do, get a good look at that. It is in there. It is in there firm. I'm gonna take a fork. Okay, and what I'm gonna do, this is actually called docking, D-O-C-K, docking the pastry. So I'm getting the fork all over here, and this will help the steam to have some place to go so you won't get puffiness. All right, that's looking good. Okay, so before I started this process, I should have said so before, but I preheated the oven to 350. This is gonna go into the oven for, let's see, about 22 minutes, or until there's some light brown around the edges. So this is the pre-bake for the pastry crust. So this is gonna go in there for about 22 minutes, and then we'll take it out and we'll put the filling on top of it. Okay, the shortbread crust is baking. So now let's go over what's in the lemon part of the lemon bar. So what you're gonna need is probably two fresh lemons. You see this? Fresh lemons, we'll get back to that. Sugar, flour, 2 eggs. That's it, that's the whole lemon part. Let me show you what to do with the lemons first. Okay, so I got the 2 lemons. What we want is 2 parts of the lemon. We want the juice inside and the rind outside, both those parts. And if you don't have access to lemon rind at your house, that's okay. You don't have to use lemon rind, but it's nice to have. Okay. This is a microplane zester. So what I'm doing is I'm just scraping off just the outer yellow part of the rind. And I keep moving the lemon so that I get more of just the tip top part of the lemon. I don't want to get all that white stuff. See, that's the lemon rind right there. Right there. So I'm going to keep doing this to both of these lemons, and we'll see how much zest or rind that we get. Okay, so I got my lemon zest or rind. I didn't get a whole lot of it. Some lemons have more than others, but that's good. And now the important part, the most important part, is the juice. Now, here's the thing. You gotta use fresh lemons. Do not buy this stuff, okay? The lemon juice that's in the little container. No, this doesn't taste even close to as fresh as real lemon juice. So if you want these to taste absolutely amazing, you have to use fresh lemons. Why do I even have this at my house, you might ask? Because it's good for squeezing on top of a cut open avocado to keep the avocado from browning or apples from browning. And I use it when I make jam, but not for when I make lemon desserts. Nope, never. Okay. So you're gonna want to squeeze this, ooh, that's nice juicy lemon. Squeeze this lemon juice. This is a strainer. And I put it on top of the measuring cup so it'll pick up the seeds and some of the pulp. What you're gonna need is a 1/4 cup of this wonderful fresh lemon juice. Nothing like the fresh lemon juice. So we'll come back when I have a 1/4 cup of this. Okay, so remember the bowl that the crust mixture was mixed in? I'm using the same bowl. Why? Because I don't want to clean a different bowl. It's empty and it's perfectly usable. Okay, I've got my 2 eggs in there, and I'm gonna whisk up the eggs like that. I'm also gonna add a cup of white sugar, a cup of regular sugar, 2 tablespoons of flour. At home, I happen to have a 2 tablespoon measure, so I'm using this. At school, you guys don't have one of these, so you will use 2 tablespoons of flour. So we're gonna mix that in together. Mixing it, mixing it, mixing it. Okay, we're also gonna add that 1/4 cup of lemon juice, freshly squeezed lemon juice, and that lemon zest or rind. Mix that in there. Okay. So just until that looks nice and smooth, you don't have to whisk it forever. But the crust that we put into the oven, that I put into the oven about 22 minutes ago, is just about ready. So we'll be taking it out of the oven and pouring this lemon custard, is what it is, this lemon custard mixture over it. You can pour this right over the crust mixture when it's hot. When the crust is hot, there's no problem with that. So we'll be back in a minute. Okay, so you remember that crust we made? See how it's getting some nice brown around the edges? This is beautiful, and what I'm gonna do is, there's that lemon custard we just made. Okay, so we're gonna pour this over here. Just like that. In you go. Get it all out of there. Okay. Now, this is going to go back into the oven for, let's see, about 25 minutes. About 25 minutes. I would set your timer for 23 and see how it does. But now this is going to go, like I said, back into the oven. This is super hot. It just came out of the oven and it's going back. So remember, you're going to need mitts to put this back into the oven for 23 minutes, maybe 25 minutes. We'll see when it comes out. So I will take it out. I will come back when I've taken it out of the oven. Okay, so the lemon bars have come out of the oven. Actually, it came out a long time ago, and I put them in the refrigerator for overnight. It's important to let these cool at room temperature and then put it in the refrigerator for several hours, preferably overnight. Don't try to cut them while they're warm, okay? It'll be just a mushy mess, and they're not supposed to be eaten warm anyway. They're supposed to be eaten cold. Okay, so remember how we line this with the heavy duty foil. Here's why, okay? You can just lift it out, just like that. Uh-oh, get out of here. Okay, and we're back. So I've lifted it out of the foil. And now what you can do is just pull back the foil and peel it off. See that? Peel the whole foil off. If some of the foil stays behind, make sure you get it off. Nobody wants a mouthful of foil, but just a mouthful of the delicious lemon bar. So peel off that foil. Come on, foil. definitely could not do what I just did if it was still warm. It'd be all over the place. It'd be a yucky mess. Okay, so now we've got our square. So what you're going to do is you're going to put it on a cutting board as I have, and you're going to cut it into 16 squares, okay? Now, you might be thinking, why 16? That's too many. Just cut it into 4 or 6 or something. These are rich, guys. These are rich cookies, okay? And if you have one and you're like, wow, that was great, I want another, then have another. But what you don't want is a big hunk of it and you take like 6 bites of it and then you have half a hunk all with your germs on it, and now what are we gonna do? So you're gonna go 16 squares. Fortunately, that's very geometric and very easy. So just take your knife, and the first cut you make, get all the way through the crust, is 1 crust right like that. Then turn it, and we're gonna go another cut just like that. Now you should have 4 squares, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take one of the squares and I'm gonna do the exact same thing to this small square as I did to the big square, which is in half, and then like that. So I will come back when I have cut them all, and we're gonna end up with 16, and then we're gonna give them their beautiful finish to make them really, really pretty. Okay, so I cut them into 16 squares. Now I'm gonna take this powdered sugar right here, and I'm gonna put it into my little strainer. If you had a sifter, you could also use it. But what I'm gonna do is I put a little bit of that powdered sugar into the strainer, and now we're going to put it over some of these lemon bars. This just makes everything pop. They look super special now. A little extra bit of sweetness. Now I'm only gonna do that to some of them now, because if you put the powdered sugar on them and leave them to sit for a long time, like several hours, the powdered sugar just gets absorbed into the top of the cookie, and you can't see it anymore. So I'm only gonna do a few of them at this point, because we're only gonna eat a few of them now. These guys, I will just sugar them when we're ready to eat these over here. But that's how you do that. These are just delicious and not too hard to make, and I hope you give them a try at home.